And welcome to the Family Support Pilot webinar for agency coordinators. This webinar is being recorded today. I will go through the presentation, and at the end of the webinar we will stop the recording and take questions. Feel free to type questions into the question box as we go along. And for instructions on how to post questions, you can follow these steps. Go to the top right-hand corner of your computer screen and you should see a red arrow. Click the arrow to expand the control panel, and partway down the control panel you should see a box where you can type in and send questions. Again, we may unmute participants to give feedback. I'll be sure to give you notice before that happens. Okay, let's get going. So on the call today we have myself. This is Nicole Lohr. I'm a pre-K specialist with the Department of Early Learning, ECAP team, and I'm located here in Spokane. And we also have...
Good morning, this is Carrie Beamer. I'm a pre-K specialist located in the Bellevue office.
So our agenda today is going to center around motivational interviewing. So we'll start with what is motivational interviewing. We'll talk about core values and beliefs. We'll talk about some concepts to consider. We'll also talk about ambivalence. And then we do have a couple of things added to the agenda a little bit after that. So we will also have some resources for motivational interviewing. So I'll show you a website, and we'll talk with a couple of agency coordinators if we have time to do that. And then I also wanted to show you all the newest family support report that is available now in ELMS, and so I'll do a short tutorial on that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to take a poll. So I'm going to, this is my second time doing a poll, so please bear with me here. Okay, so I'm going to launch the poll. How often do you offer training for motivational interviewing or similar? So about 73% on the phone call have not offered it yet, and others have offered it once or twice a year. That's great. Thanks for giving us that information. I'm going to ask a very similar question also, but just a little bit different. So let's launch another poll. So what is your staff's comfort level around motivational interviewing is what we're going to ask next. I'm going to give it 1 or 2 more seconds to see if anyone else out there is going to vote. And okay. Go ahead and close that and share that. So it looks like of the folks that answered again, about 55% have not had training in motivational interviewing or similar yet. And about 36% say they're a little bit confident, and about 9% say they're somewhat confident. So it's good to know. Sounds like we're kind of starting out with some motivational interviewing training this year, and I'm really excited to have a couple of folks share about how that has been going in their programs with their staff a little bit later in the webinar. Okay, so I'm going to launch it to the next screen here, and just bear with me for a minute because I need to give Carrie the controls. So let me figure out how to do that, and then we will move on.
So Nicole, while you're seeing about giving me the control for the thing, I can go ahead and sort of introduce this idea of what motivational interviewing is. Right. So the definition of motivation is the act or the process of giving someone a reason for doing something. And then sort of the opposite would be ambivalence. So ambivalence is the coexistence of the opposing attitudes or feelings towards a person, object, or idea. And so it's that relationship between resolving the ambivalence in goal setting that is really at the core of motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is a very non-judgmental, gentle approach to goal setting that is directive and purposeful, but in a non-confrontational way. So if you look at the slide, the first definition is MI is a method that works on facilitating and engaging intrinsic motivations, or those within you, within the client, in order to change behavior. And the other thing to think about motivational interviewing is that it's very goal-oriented, client-centered style that we're trying to get behavior change and helping clients resolve that ambivalence around that idea. And I think it's important to remember that motivational interviewing is very much a coaching model. It's why it really works very nicely with the family support pilot. And as your family support specialists that you're working with are working with families, we are thinking about it as a coach guiding them along the bridge. And the thing to remember about coaching is coaches don't jump ahead, they don't jump to conclusions, they're not moving faster than the families are themselves. They're moving right alongside, offering support and guidance as we go through this goal setting process. Okay, let's see if I have control. Let's see if I have control.
Do you?
I don't believe I have control.
Okay, I gave you the keyboard and mouse. Do you want me to switch you into presenter mode?
Sure.
Then we can just switch back. Okay, I am going to...
Oh, that means I have a PowerPoint up, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Hang on a minute, guys.
You can just go to the next slide and we will figure this out.
Okay.
So the reasons that we're talking about why are we wanting to use motivational interviewing, and it's basically family success rate has increased while their frustration decreases when we're using these techniques. Motivational interviewing gives families hope. There is a lot of research and a lot of data out there around motivational interviewing and how it can change people's perspective and get them to actually change their behavior. And it allows families to create realistic expectations around goal setting. So motivational interviewing is this particular way of helping someone recognize and to do something about their current or potential problems. It is viewed as being particularly useful for those people who are reluctant to change or who have the ambivalence about that change in behavior. The strategies that motivational interviewing are more than just persuasion, but they are more of a supportive than argumentative sort of communication style. And again, it's really important to think of motivationship. Motivational interview really honors the client's autonomy, and autonomy meaning the freedom from external controls or influences, independent, to make their own decisions, set their own goals. And you know, for example, when autonomy is not honored, it can really lead to some resistance. So when people feel like their freedom to choose an action is threatened, they are motivated to perform that threatened behavior to prove that they are still free, that their free will is still intact. So one of the examples I have is, you know, if you're just always hammering somebody who's a smoker and saying, you need to quit, you need to quit, you need to quit, sometimes it may have the opposite effect with people that say, oh, you can't tell me what to do. I'm still going to do this. I'm in control of myself. Somebody else isn't going to control me. Okay, Nicole, we could go to the next slide.
Will you try it out for me, Carrie, and see if you can do it? I'm supposed to stop moving my mouse. There we go.
Hey,
you got it.
I did it. Oh, boy. Okay. So now we're going to talk about sort of the differences between values and beliefs This is really at the center of motivational interviewing, is not only for your clients, but for your family support staff, for ourselves as agency coordinators, just us as human beings, recognizing that we all bring certain beliefs and values to our work. And so it's important for us to spend some time for people to understand sort of the differences between what is a value and what is a belief. So I'm going to start with beliefs. And when we think about beliefs, we think about that these are the assumptions that we hold true. When we use our beliefs to make decisions, we are assuming casual relationships of the past, which have led to that belief and also apply in the future. In a rapidly changing world where complexity is increasing day by day, using information from the past to make decisions about the future may not be the best way to support us in meeting our needs. So basically, beliefs are the assumptions you come to in your life. You make assumptions about based on past experiences, based on culture, based on your environmental situations, but they're the assumptions that you bring with you. Whereas a value is not just based on information from your past, but values are sort of universal. Values sort of transcend context because they're based on what is important to us. They're based on what's important to your family. They're based on what's your experience as a human being. And values are related to our needs. Whatever we need, whatever is important to us, whatever is missing from our lives is what we value. And as our life conditions change throughout the years, and as we mature and grow and have psychological development, those priorities and those values may change. But when we use our values to make a decision, we focus on what's important to us and what we feel as a sense of well-being, right? And so basically, when you're making decisions about goal setting, when you are taking into account your values or you're much more likely to get that behavior change when they are in line with each other. So this is why it's important for us to look at our own belief system and value system. And as an agency coordinator, it's really important to talk about this with your family support staff. So for example, if you have a staff member that has a core value that it's very important to her or him that professional development and working outside of the home, they place a very high value to that. And then they're working with an ECAP mom who has sort of the opposite value and really believes she wants to stay home until her kids go to kindergarten. This may unconsciously or consciously affect the ability for the family support person to to help guide them through their goal, right? They could actually have some conflict there in their belief system. I thought I got it to go. There I go. Okay, so core beliefs. So if you can see this picture, you know, it's that pair of rose-colored glasses that you're looking through the world, but, you know, everyone sees the world differently, and two people can have the same experience, yet still interpret what happened very, very differently. Core beliefs are deeply held beliefs like a pair of sunglasses, and everyone has a different shade that causes them to see things differently. So I think it just is a little delayed in my clicking. There we go. As an agency coordinator, what can you do? So the first thing is recognize that core beliefs are affecting family support person's work, and work with those individuals to see the effects of their work. So what happens when a family support worker faces a situation where there's a clash of competing values, such as personal values or professional ones? Ideally, one would prefer that there be a high level of congruency between the two. Nevertheless, reality often is that we bring into our own practice our own personal core values and the beliefs and biases shaped through our life experience. And as ascribed a high level of importance on personal values and life experiences at times may create that disconnect with our social values. So, for example, setting goals about returning to work as a woman with a small baby may be challenging for some if their core belief is a woman should stay home. So we kind of talked about that as an example. And maybe I feel like I have I maybe want to just pause and make sure that there isn't anybody out there that what I've covered so far they don't have a question or a comment about, or they would like to share. Raise your hand of a situation where you sort of ran into those sort of things, where your staff had conflicting values, and how it was that you were able to sort of bring that to light, or how you handled it.
Okay, so Carrie, I'm going to take back control just for a minute. So I have someone that has a comment. So Unity has a comment, and Unity, I'm going to try to unmute you to see if you can make that comment, and if that doesn't work, then you can type it into the question box, but I'm going to go ahead and try to unmute you. Okay, Unity, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, amazing. Okay. Something I heard in a reflective supervision training years ago that I just is to really pay attention to what we were just talking about, and then ask yourself if what you're experiencing is disagreeable or unacceptable. And that way it can help you check your own bias. So, if the answer is, well, it's disagreeable because I don't believe the same way, then that's one thing. But if it's unacceptable because it's unsafe or it's illegal or it's, meets some other criteria, that's one way to kind of keep your own biases in check. So
okay.
Something I've used in
an All right, so you're asking, you've heard that there's the tenet kind of that you go through is it agreeable and is it acceptable? Is that correct? That's what I heard?
Yeah, basically.
Great.
Or is it unacceptable? And answer that question and then go from there as far as your life.
Yeah. It's good to take a moment and think, kind of have that ability to stop and think and then move on from there. Okay. Great. Thanks, Unity. All right, I'm going to mute you back again. Anyone else have a question that they'd like to add, ask, or a comment that they'd like to add? I'm not seeing anything come into the question box yet, Carrie, so you could probably move on.
All right, let's go to the next slide. So there's my friend Lucy, and the one thing about motivational interviewing in the context that we are using it is to remember this is not therapy. So there are very, very strict therapeutic models around motivational interviewing, but for our purposes, when we're talking about it, I think there's we need to be really, really cognizant that this can't slip into therapy mode, because our family support staff, we're not trained therapists. So while there are a variety of many variations in the techniques as we encounter, the spirit and the method, however, is more enduring and can be characterized in a few points. So I'm going to kind of go over a few things around motivational interviewing. Although we say to a parent or guardian in an example below, this could also apply to motivational work when you complete with your family support specialist that you support. So these sort of things I'm outlining definitely have to do with families, but they also can be carried over into with the family support staff that you're working with. So basically, motivation to change is elicited from parents and guardians. It is not imposed on them, right? Like, we don't come up with their goals for them. We really want them to have power and that autonomy to come up with their own goals. It is the parent or guardian's task, not the family support staff, to articulate and resolve the ambivalence in the situation. So for family support people, I can think of, it's not their job to convince that parent they're doing the right thing, right? Like, the parent really needs to resolve that ambivalence within themselves. I always remember hearing when I did family support work, like, I don't want my family support staff to be working harder than the client is. And I think sometimes when we see that staff is working harder than the families are, then that's when that relationship has kind of gotten off balance. The relationship between family support and families is definitely resembles a coaching model. Again, the family support is moving alongside the family, not in front of them, not far behind them, but moving right along with them. And again, this motivational interviewing style is a very non-judgmental, non-confrontational, non-adversarial relationship. And this approach attempts to increase the client's awareness of potential problems caused, consequences, experiences, the risks that may be faced if they continue this behavior. What if you don't? And what if you change your behavior? So it's really getting them to resolve that ambivalence and really move forward with their goal setting. So I'm curious for you guys that are out there. I know this happens in the field, and if anybody has any way that they have resolved this with their family support folks, is how do you work with your family support specialist in helping them see that they may be going down this therapeutic road? And how do you bring that to light with them, and how do you avoid slipping down into that therapy hole with the families that you're working with? Does anybody have a comment or a good thing that they've used in the past when you feel like things are slipping into therapy? I'll give you a minute to think about it. No one? It's Monday morning. Everybody's being shy again.
I don't see any comments coming up yet, but we can always either revisit it or just kind of leave it out there for people to think about and talk about it later also.
All right, let's see if we can't go on that. Okay, so we're going to talk about, I think there's 4 things that we want to avoid during successful motivational interviewing. Helping family support specialists see when they may be falling into these pitfalls can be make for better outcomes for families. The following slides that I'm going to show you will help family support staff become aware of their personal requirements to do motivational interviewing well. So the first thing we want to do is avoid being the expert and having the answers to all of the participants' problems. And again, we are not the experts. Family support staff have to detach themselves from being right. I'm just going to have you think back for a moment about a time that this has maybe happened to you, or you know that it's happened, where someone feels like, oh, this is the right, I know the right thing to do for this family. Why don't they know the right thing to do? So does anybody out there have a comment or a question? What do you do when your family support staff, or how do you get them to avoid this sort of need to be the expert and know exactly what a family should be doing?
So we do have a couple of comments that came in about the last slide real quick. Carrie, do you want me to read those ones?
Yeah, absolutely.
And while people think about maybe other situations that you just mentioned. So Mary Shower says that, you know, when they're, let me go back to, you know, talking about the balance between family support work and therapy, and that she says, you know, we use the phone to staff specific issues and then really use that reflective practice with them to see if they're getting too involved and talk through that. And so it's kind of it sounds like it's a one-on-one situation where she'll, you know, meet with the staff or a couple of staff at one time, maybe a small group to discuss that. And then we also have Dominique saying with a comment as well, and she says that they have mental health therapists from our agency that meet with their staff quarterly as a group to talk about tricky situations and balance of boundaries and support with families and the hard work that they encounter daily. So it's really great to know that you have a therapist that comes in to help debrief and discuss and work through some of those issues. Thanks for sharing, both of you, both Mary and Dominique.
Yeah, those are really great suggestions. You know, when I'm talking, another example might be when I'm thinking about this side is, you know, if you're working with a family and maybe one of their goals is to save money, and then all of a sudden they tell you, oh, well, I'm taking all of my children to Disneyland over spring break, and, you know, your face is going, taking a face. You know, it's really hard because you have this, maybe your own personal belief or your values is that saving money is really important. And then, you know, I think you need to resist the need to say, you can't do that, or that's not what you need to be doing, right? You need to pay your rent, you need to be doing all these things. So just being aware that we're not the experts and we don't know everything.
Carrie, we have one more comment that just came in.
Absolutely.
So Unity says, with a kind of know-it-all situation too, that they use reflective supervision with staff, with the staff person, and then help the staff person to understand or experience being on the other side of that. So the reflective supervisor can help them kind of understand the situation and the experience that someone might be going through if they're encountering that.
It's a really great thing. Thanks, Unity. The next sort of pitfall we want to avoid is that the outcomes of family goals are not about you. And there's my little crown. So, you know, as a family support specialist, you really are the guide, and what other people decide to do shouldn't be a personal reflection of the job you're doing as a family support specialist. And family support staff should see them as sort of the way station on the road to change, but that the outcomes are not directly related to them. And I know many of you have been in the family support field for a while, and it is very difficult for staff at times to not, if families aren't progressing or moving like you think that they should, that you say to yourself, well, I must not be doing enough for them, or it must be maybe my style, or I'm not doing, you know, what am I doing as a family support person that's not getting them to their outcome. So I'd really love to know, too, you agency coordinators out there, if you have any techniques or that's something you can share that you've done in the past, that when you see maybe a family support person who's really getting down on themselves because they feel like outcomes of a family are reflective of the work that they're doing, and how you have been able to sort of mitigate those feelings for family support people. And if it's easier than typing, you can always just ask us. You can type this and say, "Can you unmute me?" And we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that there might be a few people typing in an answer right now, or something. So we'll give a moment.
Okay, well, I'll go to the next slide. You guys can just jump in whenever you, all you need to do is let us know you want to be unmuted, and you can leave us a comment. So again, no matter how hard you try, you bring your own belief system into your work. And just like we've talked about a lot this morning, you know, we all do it, and it's nearly impossible to not bring some of that stuff with you. But recognizing that you have your own biases can help in motivational interviewing, because then when you recognize it, you can kind of go, oh, I'm getting those feelings again, right? Oh, my belief system is getting woven into what's happening with this family. I need to be aware of that. And we've sort of talked about this in the family support pilot, but I love how closely interconnected they are with motivational interviewing. And in motivational interviewing, really any movement towards a goal is a celebration. And baby steps along the way, instead of always taking giant leaps, can be a good thing. And we should encourage family support staff to recognize and call out even those small moments in the right direction towards the goal, because that is really related to motivation. So, you know, taking those moments to sort of call out, and even though it may seem like it wasn't that big of a deal, but maybe they did call the community college that weekend and got a schedule mailed to their house. That could be it seems like a small thing, but it should be celebrated because it is going towards that goal. Okay. So the other thing I want to talk about is this idea of ambivalence. And motivational interviewing is changing conflicting feelings and resolving that ambivalence. Ambivalence is often at the heart of the struggles we embark on to change. It's important to understand someone else's ambivalence, because ambivalence is often the central problem, and a lack of motivation can be manifestation of this ambivalence. So in other words, if I just am on the fence and I'm like, yeah, I could go back to school or I could not go back to school, this is directly related to my motivation to wanting to go back to school or not to go back to school, right? It's important to remember that if you interpret ambivalence as denial or resistance, friction between you and your client tends to occur. So when you see people sort of on the fence about something, knowing that there's a big difference between denial and resistance towards that goal is merely ambivalence, really can affect your relationship and how you're moving forward with that family. You know, an example I can think of is, you know, a parent that is living in a really, maybe it's a really bad living situation, and they feel ambivalent about making a change. For you, you can see that as maybe, oh, they're just in denial about their, you know, where they're living, or they just don't want to change, where it really could be that they are just having these mixed feelings about their situation, which is directly tied to their motivation. So I don't know if any of you out there have any other techniques or thoughts that you've used with your family support staff to help them see that ambivalence is not always denial or resistance, that there is a difference between the two. And I'll give you just a minute in case somebody wants to talk about that. All right, well, if you guys think about it or have another comment, I think, Nicole, it's back to you. Does that mean I need to give you back
I think
keyboard
I
and
might
mouse?
have taken care of it already.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. So we do have one comment that came in, and I think it's just kind of another idea for a way to stop and think about the situation. So Estelle is saying that they really encourage their staff to stay curious and ask questions, which is probably a good way to kind of have that self-check about what you're feeling about that, and just ask more questions to find out more information. Thanks, Estelle. Okay, so really quickly, we're going to move on to some motivational interviewing resources, and we'll jump onto the website here in a moment. Let me move this over. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that on your screen. Let me just double check. Yep, okay. So this is the ECLEC website. This is the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center, and it's from Head Start. It's a Head Start website. So they have a motivational interviewing suite. So what's really interesting about this this site is that they have some video examples here. They have a home visit with an early Head Start mom, where they're talking about a depression screening, I believe. And then they also have this motivational interviewing consulting where a teacher and a parent are meeting about some challenging behaviors that the child has had in the classroom. And they're both really kind of, I was watching them and I was kind of getting uncomfortable just listening, like, oh, this is kind of an uncomfortable conversation to have with this parent. And it's really interesting to see the techniques that they're using there. So there's a viewer's guide that you can download to watch these with, or to have your staff watch them with. There's also some related materials down here, about the first one down here is what is motivational interviewing, and why use it in Head Start and early Head Start programs, and that can be fairly applicable to ECAP as well. And then we have a couple of other related materials here, and I'm just going to click on using motivational interviewing techniques to more effectively partner with parents. And there's a webinar here that you can view, or you can download the transcript here too. So they actually have a recorded webinar that I think it's almost an hour long that that you or your staff could also look at there. So I can send out the link to this later, and I will make sure to post it on Basecamp as well, just to have it available for everyone here. Okay. So the other thing that I'm going to do real quickly, I'd have planned to have a couple of folks talk about what they do for either motivational interviewing or some sort of, coaching of staff to help coach families through difficult situations and difficult conversations. And unfortunately, one of the people that I asked to kind of talk a little bit about what they've done with their staff so far was unable to come today. But I do have someone else on the line. I have Beth from Snohomish County, who is also willing to talk about what she does for her staff, and it's a little it's a little bit, what they do right now is a little bit different than motivational interviewing, but really the point of it is to talk about how you help your staff navigate through these difficult conversations with families. So Beth, if you're, I got your comment, and I will share, I'll look up the information. She has some professional development information for a person that does workshops on motivational interviewing, and I can look up that contact information and share it. But Beth, I'm just going to unmute you for if you would just for a couple of minutes talk about the practice you've put in place for your staff to help with this process of difficult conversations, and how it's made a difference as you've gone through the pilot. So Beth, you should be unmuted now.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. Welcome.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. So I'm Beth with Snohomish County ECAP, and this is our second year of the Mobility Mentoring Pilot Project. And as we reflected on what transpired last year with our families, with our staff, and we really talked with our staff routinely about what more did they need to have training-wise in order to most effectively implement this. A few kind of common themes came out, and one of them was that building partnerships with families that help the families progress toward their goals, engaging in those more difficult conversations. We saw a need for assistance in conducting conversational assessments rather than just a list of kind of unrelated questions to gather that information, but how to actually have a conversation with families that elicits the family circumstances and what their needs are, but not in a checklist kind of way, and then also resources. So Nicole asked me to talk a little bit about that, engaging in difficult conversations. So we had several of our site staff. We have 42 family support workers at our various sites, and I think about 8 of them attended the career and life coaching training that was offered at the Summer Institute last year. They found it really helpful, came back, gave us a lot of good feedback, and so we decided to partner with the Prosperity Agenda, who facilitated that training, to do a 2-day, what we called coaching conversations training with our staff before they began their fall home visits. So the Prosperity Agenda Career and Life Coaching Training is really for weekly home visits, which we all know is not feasible, doable as our ECAP life currently exists. But they really were willing to work with us around what are the pieces of what they do, especially those coaching conversations, the skills, the coaching mindset, how you approach engaging in a coaching relationship with families, how that could work for 3 or 4 home visits during the year. So we did our first 2 days in October, and those days focused on many, many, many opportunities to practice. So we practiced in triads and then just rotated through with being the family support worker, the family member, and the observer. We began by really defining coaching. So looking at what is the role of a coach, and it's really to come alongside, as Carrie was saying, and support a family to make change. We spend a fair amount of time on the stages of change and how you coach families who are in the different stages. So a little different perspective than the ambivalence, but definitely included in that. And so where is a family and how do you support them with that? We looked a bit at executive function skills and the impact those have related to setting goals and achieving goals. And then we spent a lot of time on the coaching mindset. So as our staff are approaching that coaching relationship, really looking for themselves at what do they bring to that relationship and what should that mindset be. So some of the pieces that were in that were focused listening, bringing curiosity. I know someone else spoke about that. Asking powerful questions. So those are questions that we don't already assume to know the answer. So I think that kind of comes back to what Carrie was saying about when folks feel the need to be right or have the right answer, that actually we want our staff to be asking questions that are going to help them understand more the family situation and listen for those pieces of values of the family, what's motivating the family, what's important. Some more of the coaching mindset was really looking at forwarding action. So that is what the Prosperity Agenda refers to as continuing to be looking and helping the family move forward. So not just staying in the moment of frustration or what's holding them back, but always looking to how can we help them move forward, how can I learn more about them. That listening for the family values, the focus on strengths really aligns beautifully with ECAP and building rapport. So we did some practice just around getting to know someone, using those, having that mindset and using some of those skills. And then we moved on to some of the actual coaching tools. So the powerful questions, reflective listening. Celebrating is big, which Carrie talked about, really looking at when families have made progress, and acknowledging families for their strengths, acknowledging the progress that's made. A couple other tools are holding the focus, which is we really go into those relationships saying, you know, our goal here, our purpose is to help you to look at what the circumstances are, look at where are areas where things are going well and where are areas where you want to make improvement. We're here to support you in setting those goals, and just keep continually bringing the focus of those home visits back to that being the purpose. So we practiced that, and then there were a couple tools that aligned beautifully with what we were doing with mobility mentoring. The Wheel of Life is one tool that we have used a lot this year, and the feedback has been great. And it basically is a wheel that has concentric circles inside of it, and it's divided into 8 different slices of the pie, so to speak, and those all align with the pillars of the bridge. So what we actually ask the family to do is to color in that wheel starting in the center and moving out in each one of those sections. They determine how full to color in that section. If they are completely happy with that section of the wheel, they can most certainly color it all the way in. So for instance, educational attainment, if they may only color in 3 or 4 rings. It's up to them. We do that for all the different components, and then our staff use what the family has done on that wheel to then have that conversation with them. So they'll say things like, you know, I noticed on educational attainment you colored into 4. Tell me about that. Why is it 4? And then they dig deeper into each one of those different categories. We found it to be exceptionally helpful because it provides a visual way. It's a nice way for families to kind of really start to tell you about what the circumstances in their life, but in a really non-threatening, really accepting way, because there is no right or wrong way to color in this wheel. It really is where the family is. So I would say that that has been a huge piece. I will also tell you that for some families, they don't enjoy the wheel, and the staff have just moved them onto the bridge. And for families who are a little bit more linear, maybe not quite as visual, and but like everything lined up, the bridge has worked really well too. So then they just talk with the family about the bridge. So if they have used the wheel, then they get a good sense of where the family is, and then they move to the bridge and ask the family to circle those different levels on the pillar where they feel they are on the bridge, and they then use that as the springboard for setting goals. So feedback has been that the wheel has allowed them to go deeper than they did last year, that they feel more confident in having conversations. And I will say the other piece that we found was that we needed to make sure we had resources available to all of our staff, that if they got into and dug into those deeper issues, that we needed to make sure we had provided resources for them to be able to give to families. So
great.
Quick overview of 2 days.
Thank you. Yeah, a quick overview of a lot of training and a lot of hard work, it sounds like. Thank you so much for sharing, Beth.
Oh, you're welcome.
Hey, Nicole, this is Karen Gans, and I just wanted to pop in and say that I just wanted everyone on the line to know that we actually heard also from Mary Schauer at ESD 101 about how much her staff liked the training that the Prosperity Agenda staff that they attended. I think you had, Beth, your staff and some ESD 101 staff were both at that training, and so I just wanted everyone to know that we've been talking with so I have been talking with folks from the Prosperity Agenda and looking into ways that next year when we provide training, which actually really means this spring, because we've heard back from everyone that you really need us to provide the training earlier in the year so that you have time to be able to plan over the summer and prepare staff, and then to have everything ready when enrollment is happening in the fall. And so we're looking into the possibility of making sure that the training that Beth was talking about, that Wheel of Life training, that is an optional third-day training that will be available for folks to be able to participate in when we roll out training this May.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, and Mary also did share with us in the chat box that very much what you said, Karen, about they went to the same, some of the family support staff went to the same training, and they're really excited about the possibility of connecting those two things. Okay, so we're getting a little limited on time, and so I just wanted to share with everyone really quickly about this afternoon. We're going to go through some of the same information that you've heard already this morning about motivational interviewing, and then we're going to have some empath staff on as well, and they're going to give us some connections to mobility mentoring work in the field. And we're also going to do a lot about goal setting, and not sure that we have time to do that this morning, but you will. It's almost exactly the same thing that I was going to share with you this afternoon, just with a more focus on talking directly to your staff, as it's the direct services staff webinar. So we'll talk about the goal setting process. We'll talk about connecting goal setting and motivation, and we'll talk about this motivation column and what really we can do to help that column in helping the families move forward. So I'm just going to kind of click through this, and then we'll talk a little bit about extrinsic and intrinsic motivation and how that also relates to goal setting and where we want to try to help families move as we go throughout the year using this approach. So really quickly, I would love to pop onto ELMS and give you guys a short tutorial on the new report that just came out. So let's see if I can remember my password here. Okay. So I'm going to go to the new report. It is called Family Assessment and Goals Count. And I click the drop-down menu to say that we'd like to go to this year. It's the only available year. And I'm going to click that I want to view by contractor. And it's going to tell me just a moment. If anybody has any questions that they have right now about the content of what we just presented, or any questions about this afternoon, now would be a great time to show those or to do those. Send those in the question box. And I'm going to click a contractor that I already got permission from beforehand to share their information. So this is, I'm just going to pull up this report here. Okay, so what it will show you is that at ESD 123, there's 245 children enrolled, and they have 195 pre-assessments complete, no post-assessments yet, obviously, that's at the end of the year. And then families with at least one goal are 222. So some of the things that I want to share with you, hopefully ESD 123 staff aren't on the line thinking, what does this look different? But one thing to note is that completed assessments, pre-assessments complete, actually means that there's not a single question skipped on the assessment. If there is, that assessment will not show up as completed. So if you look at this and you think, oh wow, this looks a little low, I'm not sure that 80% is, I thought we were closer to 100% done. You might want to have your staff go back and check and see if they accidentally missed a question on the assessment. So right now we don't require all the questions to be completed when you first do it, because we want staff to be able to go back and edit it as well. So just make sure that if you want those assessments to show up as complete, then all those questions need to be answered. So ELMS is either in process or has kind of made a fix to remind staff when there's a question missing from the assessment. It will highlight the 0 score on the assessment red on the main family support pilot page. I'll show you a screenshot of that in just a moment. And in the future, it should also have a pop-up alert with the exclamation point next to the child's name in the child search box. So very similar to like a health alert or a developmental screening alert. When you search for that child, there'll be an exclamation point. You can click on the exclamation point, the red exclamation point on next to their name, and it'll pop up with a pop-up that says all the things that they might need attention for. If it's just the pre-assessment, it'll say pre-assessment is missing 1 or more questions or something similar to that. So and eventually we will also have a report that will show individual children and show which individual children are missing or don't have a completed assessment. So those things are still coming. I believe that the 0, the highlighted 0 that's red, changed the font color to red, that has already happened. So I'll show you that in a minute. And one of the other things to note with this also is that coordinator level staff, so you agency coordinators, will see all of the sites that you have access to when searching at the contractor level. So that's every site that you have the family support pilot role for. Now, if site staff run the report at the contractor level, they will only see the amounts for the sites they have access to. So they might say, oh, for example, at Snohomish County, Beth, maybe one of your site staff will run the report at the contractor level and see, oh my gosh, we're only doing 30 families, but that's just because that's the number of families they're assigned to at their site. So they won't be able to see a full count for the contractor, but you should be able to with all the multiple sites that you're assigned to as the agency coordinator. So this is report number 1 out of more to come, and we will continue to build them as we go throughout the rest of the school year. So really quickly, I'm going to show you that screenshot of what it looks like. So here's an assessment, and you can see all of the post-assessment levels. Those are all zeros, and they're all red too, right? But you can also see under school involvement and advocacy. Let me see if I can kind of spotlight this real quick right here. School involvement and advocacy, this one is a 0. So that is probably making this whole assessment say that it's not complete. So if your staff see that and it says 0 on there, they can go and edit the pre-assessment and add an answer for that question there and save it. And it should put the level in there and change it back to black, hopefully. Okay, so I think with that, if we have any questions, we can take them now. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Just 1 second.